Very welcome to our talk. Why another talk about disinformation? It's a topic on many conferences and contexts, but we believe that there are a lot of misconceptions about the terms here. And we think that in the scientific and societal discussions, there are a lot of myths about misinformation and its impact, which we want to critically evaluate here. We are Hendrik Heuer and Josephine Schmidt of KAIS, which is the Center of Advanced Internet Studies in Bochum. And we look at the digital transformation and its economic, societal, and political impact of information. I'm a computer scientist in human-computer interaction and also work with artificial intelligence. I'm at the University of Wuppertal, and I am a psychologist, but I have multiple identities. I'm also a communication study educator, and I'm also interested for years with preventing misinformation and extremism on the internet. Even though as I discuss misinformation in one breath with the internet, it has a long history. Some of you will know this this picture from the history books. On this picture, you see Lenin with his party colleagues Kamenev and Trotsky from 1920. And when he dies in 1924, a power struggle ensues. Kamenev and Trotsky are fall into disgrace for dissenting, and in 1927 they're just redacted from this picture, and retrospectively history is changed. Here's another example for false information and how to use it for political purposes. This picture shows an Iraqi soldier in the Iraq War of 2003, and next to him is a U.S. soldier who is holding his gun to the head of this soldier. And if you look at the next cropping of this picture, you see that the water bottle is in the focus. And this shows that the cropping that you choose of a picture has a deep impact on the story you tell. And this is another picture of German politician from the Greens. This was distributed by the German newspaper Bild. It shows him at a protest in 1994, and supposedly it shows him protesting with autonomists that have riot sticks and bolt cutters. But if you look at the colorful version, you see that it's really a rope and a glove. In all three cases, false information was spread purposefully for political gain to have certain reactions from the recipients. And that's what, and here we come to the core of misinformation. This practice to use misinformation for political gain has a surprisingly long history. When Octavian became emperor in 32 before Christ, he used misinformation purposefully to win the goodwill and favor of his people. And before and after him, this was an important political tool. Supposedly, he spread false information for personal political gain by printing poignant sentences on coins. And he made him out to be the savior of Rome and who restored the order. But really, he was establishing an autocracy in disguise. He started a misinformation campaign against Mark Aurelius and Cleopatra to justify his war, made him out to be a womanizer and a drunkard, and implied that he had been corrupted by his affair with Cleopatra. He also said that Marcus Antonius was a puppet and circulated rumors that he was allegedly leaving territory in his after his death to Cleopatra. In the Battle of Actium, he defeated Marcus Antonius and Cleopatra, and this was made out to be a triumph of the Roman civilization over the Eastern decadence, with Augustus as a pioneer and as a victor and a hero. Before and after this example, there are an enormous amount of historical example for the spreading of false information for political gain. The painful history of anti-Semitism shows how long-term disinformation can harm people.
Desinformation, aber im Kontext der Covid-19-Pandemie. Da gab es zahlreiche Falschinformationen, zum Beispiel über die Herkunft des Virus oder die Wirkung von Impfungen. Das führte dazu, dass sich viele Menschen gegen eine Impfung entschieden haben. Beim hier abgebildeten Herrn hat es auch dazu geführt, dass er eine eher suboptimale Schutzmaske getragen hat. Und für uns als WissenschaftlerInnen stellt sich die Frage, warum waren Missinformationen und Desinformationen im Kontext der Covid-19-Pandemie eigentlich so erfolgreich? Was wir wissen, solche falschen Informationen finden sich vor allem da, wo sich Menschen komplexe Ereignisse durch vermeintlich einfache Begründungen erklärbar machen wollen. Der Zufall als Erklärungsansatz wird jedoch grundsätzlich ausgeschlossen.
Besondere Macht haben Desinformationen, wenn sie von Eliten oder ProminentInnen verbreitet werden, und sie wirken dann besonders bei denjenigen, die diesen Personen folgen bzw. eine ideologische Nähe mit ihnen aufweisen. Ein Beispiel dafür ist die sogenannte Big Lie, die große Lüge. Also dieser Begriff bezeichnet eben die falsche Behauptung, die von Donald Trump und einigen seiner UnterstützerInnen verbreitet wurde, dass die Präsidentschaftswahl 2020 zu seinen Ungunsten manipuliert worden sei. Auch wenn es überhaupt keine Beweise für diese falsche Information gibt, trugen diese falsche Informationen dazu bei, dass Trump-UnterstützerInnen 2021 das Kapitol in Washington D.C. stürmten. Und 7 von 10 RepublikanerInnen glauben sogar noch ein Jahr danach, dass die Wahl gestohlen worden sei.
Ja, vor allem in den sozialen Medien spielen KI-generierte Bilder mittlerweile eine wichtige Rolle. Hier sind 3 Beispiele mit Bezug zur Situation in Gaza. Alle hier gezeigten Bilder sind mit Hilfe von KI generiert, was man beispielsweise an der Zahl der Finger sehen kann. Sowohl staatliche als auch nichtstaatliche Akteure streuen solche falschen Informationen gezielt, um Schuldfragen zu verzerren, zivile Opfer zu rechtfertigen oder internationale Unterstützung für ihre Seite zu gewinnen.
Es gibt noch sehr viel mehr Beispiele und auch solche, die viel weniger bedrückend sind als diese politischen hier. Aber wir haben bisher immer sehr bewusst von falschen Informationen bzw. gezielt gestreuten falschen Informationen gesprochen. Warum eigentlich? Weil wir heute auch noch mal ein bisschen Licht auf die Begrifflichkeiten werfen wollen und zeigen wollen, wie komplex es eigentlich ist, richtig über diese Sachverhalte zu sprechen. Und vor 10 Jahren wurde noch sehr viel von sogenannten Fake News berichtet. Das finden wir auch immer noch in Medienberichterstattung als Terminus. Da dieser Begriff zunehmend politisiert wurde, unter anderem von Trump, wird der Begriff eher in wissenschaftlichen Kontexten mittlerweile eher vermieden.
Ja, in der Forschung verwenden wir daher lieber die Begriffe Missinformation und Desinformation. Wir persönlich bevorzugen die Definition von Wardle und Derakhshan. Wardle und Derakhshan definieren den Begriff Missinformation als falsche Informationen, einschließlich irreführender Verbindungen und irreführender Inhalte. Desinformationen werden als falsche Informationen, die eine Absicht zu schaden haben, definiert. Desinformationen sind also eine Untermenge von Missinformationen. Die Unterscheidung zwischen Missinformation und Desinformation ist uns wichtig. In unserem Titel sprechen wir ja bewusst von Desinformation, weil uns eben die Absicht zu schaden hier besonders wichtig ist. Gleichzeitig ist diese Absicht in sehr vielen Fällen nur schwer zu beweisen. Deswegen gibt es deutlich mehr Forschung, die den Begriff Missinformation nutzt. Und deswegen sprechen wir auch in diesem Talk manchmal von Missinformation und manchmal von Desinformation. Gute Definitionen für die Begriffe Missinformation und Desinformation zu liefern, ist wichtig, weil unsere Forschung zeigt, dass Begriffe wie Missinformation selbst von Expertinnen oft unterschiedlich verstanden und genutzt werden. Für eine Studie habe ich zusammen mit Kolleginnen 150 Expertinnen für Missinformation gefragt, was ihrer Meinung nach als ein Beispiel für Missinformation verstanden werden kann. Die Mehrheit der Befragten war sich einig, dass Lügen, Deepfakes, Verschwörungserzählungen und Pseudowissenschaften als Missinformation gelten. Gleichzeitig denkt eine große Mehrheit der Expertinnen, dass Satire und Parodien nicht als Missinformation verstanden werden sollten. Auch Clickbait-Überschriften und hyperparteiliche Nachrichten werden von vielen Expertinnen nicht als Missinformation betrachtet.
Als ForscherInnen werden wir im Rahmen von Presseanfragen häufig gefragt, wie wir bestimmte gesellschaftliche Phänomene einordnen. Und aufgrund der unterschiedlichen Wahlen, die wir 2024 hatten, war das Thema Funktionsweise, Wirkung und Vorgehen Desinformation etwas, was uns sehr beschäftigt hat. Und bei der Vorbereitung und auf die Fragen der JournalistInnen stolpern wir immer wieder über Mythen und Missinformationen, die sich nicht selten aus einseitigen Betrachtungen oder eben auch methodischen Herangehensweisen von wissenschaftlichen Studien ableiten lassen. Und in diese Mythen und Missinformationen wollen wir jetzt mal etwas tiefer einsteigen.
Genau, die für uns wichtigsten Beispiele.
Our most important examples we want to show you, and we orient ourselves with an example from Sascha Altemann and Bereich and Alberto Acerbi. It's important to inform people about these myths because those myths can help to intensify the misimpact of misinformation. So the first myth is that misinformation is only a problem of social media. Also, the second myth is that the internet is full of misinformation. Third is the assumption that people that misinformation spreads faster than the truth. Fourth is that people believe everything they see on the internet. The fifth is that misinformation misinforms a lot of people. And the sixth one is that misinformation has a strong impact on people. First one, misinformation is not a problem only of social media. They have been around as long as there have been humans. But there is two central reasons why we think that misinformation is a problem of the social media. First, misinformation is much more accessible for people through social media. Social media is a great place where to prioritize information that is relevant to you, and everyone can spread information here. And those are good multipliers for every information and potentially problematic for problematic senders too. But traditional media can also support the spreading of false information. That happens especially if they don't check their information or use sensational or emotionalizing content. A further problem is that misinformation in social media is overproportionally researched. Google Scholar says that there are more than 578 publications that have fake news and social media in their title. However, there are only 7 that use fake media and TV in their title. So an assumption is that the overtaking of Twitter by Musk made it easier to research fake news on Twitter or by Twitter.
Verhältnismäßig einfach Forschung über oder auf Twitter zu betreiben.
Second of all, the internet is not only misinformation. Misinformation is a comparatively small part of the internet. And according to studies that looked at the media consumption of people, for example, US Americans, they only spend 10 minutes per day consuming online news, and only 5.1% of those were false information. So it's only a small part of this.
Studies also show that a small minority of people are responsible for the majority of misinformation consumed and shared. However, one thing is important: even if misinformation is small in quantity, even a single piece of misinformation or disinformation can have serious consequences. it's therefore important to address that issue. And the third myth is that untruths do not spread faster than the truth, and that is not right. Basically, all news have the same probability of being shared and spread. The tone makes the music. So emotionalizing content, regardless of whether it is misinformation or trustworthy news, is shared particularly frequently, often even without the content being read beforehand. False information tends to trigger strong emotions such as fear or astonishment, which favors its faster spread. People are also more willing to spread this misinformation if they're agreeing, or if it agrees with their own beliefs, or if it's discussed or shared by a group with which they identify. Actors with a high degree of networking also accelerate the spread of reports. This applies to both false and true information. Through targeted strategies with regards to networking, dissemination of true information can also be optimized. Research on misinformation often fails to take into account that actually obviously an example of viral news. For example, the wedding of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, which generated millions of views and a particularly high number of interactions on social media. And another example is the picture of footballer Messi with the 2022 World Cup trophy, which broke the record for the most likes on Instagram. So both of these orange circles are the same size, but the one on the left looks much smaller than the right one. So it depends on the context, how things work, and what people believe. So simply coming into contact with misinformation and sharing it does not automatically lead to the misinformation being believed. People interact with misinformation and disinformation for a variety of reasons. To socialize, to express skepticism, outrage, or anger, to signal group affiliation, or simply to amuse themselves. The actual effect of misinformation depends on various social and individual factors. For example, people usually evaluate political statements against the background of their individual preferences. For example, people tend to believe conspiracy narratives that match their political views. And even if misinformation is believed, this does not mean that this belief leads to significant changes in behavior. But we'll come to that in a bit more detail later. So, in addition, computer-aided big data methods are increasingly being used in research. But such analysis neglects aspects such as people's agency. In the context of media psychological studies and misinformation, the context of a message is also often neglected. Of course, that's sometimes necessary because certain studies have to take the form of experiments in highly controlled settings into account. But however, that remains an important challenge for research on misinformation. The fifth assumption that a large number of people are misinformed can also be questioned. There are a number of methodological problems in scientific studies that are often cited as evidence for this statement. Researchers usually use surveys to find out how well-informed people are. But what happens when you're asked complex questions in a survey? You simply guess. Many participants in these studies do the same. So this happens all the more often when don't know or not sure answer is offered or suggested, and this happens a lot. So this can lead to participants supposedly holding beliefs that they do not actually hold as a result just of the design of the study, and that's a real problem. So these methodological problems quickly lead to unfounded alarmist narratives about the spread of disinformation. For example, it was reported that QAnon has now become mainstream, but that was mainly you could lead back to a school where this was a study was done. There was also a survey done on 4% of Americans, where 4% of Americans that were asked said that they had drank or gargled a household disinfectant. And most of this could entirely be attributed to problematic respondents. The respondents who indicated that they drank a household sanitizer also indicated that they ate concrete for the iron content and had recently suffered a fatal heart attack and died from it. So
Ja, und also beide Antworten, die kamen genauso häufig vor wie das
Both answers were as often as the drinking of household disinfectant. So once you exclude these from the data, then there is no indication that people ever drank household disinfectant to be safe against COVID-19. So you can't believe these results uncritically. Despite the alarmist news that misinformation has a strong impact on the elections, that is not true. Disinformation has an important impact in times of high societal and political insecurity because people want more simple answers and need clearer world views. And people that are especially that have less openness, lower education level, and more psychopathological inclination are more susceptible to misleading information. And the deep mistrust in traditional media also adds to the spreading of misinformation. However, the impact of disinformation is overestimated. Many people are still skeptical about the authenticity of manipulated manipulated images and the impact of disinformation on your election behavior is not, there is no evidence for it. However, there are insecurities, especially about the long-term effects of disinformation and of the measures we take against this. Also, it's unclear how strong the connection is between the believing misinformation and your actual behavior. Your beliefs are only weak predicators for your behavior. In the psychology, this is called a value-action gap. An example is that the belief in conspiracy and the disbelief in secure vaccines didn't mean that conspiracy is necessarily the origin of this. There could be a third factor in the background, which means that a low trust in institutions and media adds to both. Another example is the rumor that Obama is a Muslim. Many people believe that Obama is a Muslim, but there was no effect shown. But this effect was only shown in people that already mistrusted Obama, and there was no measurable effect for the election. Many people have wish for easy answers for complex questions, and the variety of information that we have to choose from every day adds to that. There are many reasons and scientific findings to believe misinformation. They are plausible, they have a more or less true core, and and this is what they have in common with misinformation. It's not our goal to subvert your belief in science. That's important, but our methods are important. So what can we do? We can show that we have various solutions that have their own disadvantages and advantages, and each of them can only do something small. But this Swiss cheese model is useful because together those measures are useful. I have asked 25 experts from 8 disciplines among them biology, communication, media, computer science, law, philosophy, politics, psychology, and sociology. And they proposed interventions. And the interventions they proposed were also considered by external experts. And we propose now a three-phase model. The first phase is doing something before a concrete piece of misinformation arises. The second phase means that you have to intervene when misinformation happens, but before experts can intervene. Here the users are on their own. And the third phase is for doing something after the misinformation has already been marked. In phase one, we have more education at schools, more offers for adults to strengthen the media competence of people. For example, marketing websites. This is what you can do before. And there are a lot of material and solutions, for example, web videos, information material, games. How effective this is really, that depends on the quality of the trainees, the trainers, and the interest that people bring to this. Once misinformation has emerged, other measures are important. So the orange solutions aim at supporting people with a decision whether information is disinformation or not. You can help people to find sources and to find any context for this information.
A project that I want to emphasize especially is the Co-Detect NGO. They want to enable people in the brighter populace to help with detecting misinformation. So if you're interested, the QR code on the top is to a prototype of a platform that Co-Detect is working on, and they would be delighted if you would try out that platform. They're currently still collecting feedback because they are developing the platform further in 2024. And the QR code below will take you to a signal group where you will be kept up to date if you want to become a part of the fact-checking community or want to help with further development of the platform. So-called fact checks are examples of solutions in phase two. Such fact checks take a lot of work off people's hands and show them whether something can be mis- or disinformation. Here you can find a small overview of various players who offer such fact checks. These fact checks are valuable because they counter disinformation on the internet, and they can help multipliers to inform about disinformation. However, they're also very costly. They cost a lot of time and money. Research on fact checks also shows that the sharing fact check content is typically 10 to 20 hours behind the spread of misinformation on average. So a lot of time passes where misinformation can spread, and during that we see that the clarification that is being spread has much less reach than the original misinformation. And in addition, the effectiveness is also being disputed within the research, and it also depends a lot on the media competency of the populace. But there are also interesting existing possibilities through generative AI, such as ChatGPT. Lukas Bausch, for example, has developed a bullshit detector. They adjust a genuine piece of false misinformation from the Telegram group Free Saxony. The chatbot calculates scores for the bullshit in the message, the polemics, the populism, the right-wing extremism, the conspiracy beliefs, and the spread of fear. The bot finds that the text from the Telegram group on the left is hardly credible and clearly problematic, but the bot recognizes significant problematic elements and writes that the text provides no evidence for the statement that Islamist groups stormed the Dresden Christmas market, and that the text equates Syrians with Islamist militias across the board and draws unfounded conclusions. For example, that refugees will no longer have any reasons to flee due to current developments. And the initial research show that these chatbots would have enormous potential. A study published in Science in October shows that a chatbot can convince people to give up their conspiracy theory beliefs. A conversation with a chatbot increased the belief in a conspiracy theory that the person really believed in by an average of 20%. And this is where we reach phase 3. This phase has a prerequisite that the person has decided that something is a misinformation. And this often takes time. So if you have decided that something misinformation, you can, of course, flag the message in question. You can also delete it, but yeah, if you a lot of people just suggest that education will be supported, and it's much more controversial to support or to find support for deleting the message, because this will be viewed as censorship, and that is often part of the conspiracy theories that form around these things. And it's also not as uncontroversial to question the sources behind. So education is being seen as phase 1, but it's actually necessary and useful throughout the whole process, through all phases. And I was part of an interdisciplinary project about online propaganda, and we were looking at what media, like the ability to criticize media has, and what is important for the prevention of misinformation. And on the layer awareness, we need to create awareness, as it says, for the presence of the problem and for that the misinformation exists out there in the wider internet. And the second stage, there is a reflection on problematic messages on the internet. And in the third part, we need to empower people to be a part of the discussion, to be able to discuss this with other people, to be engaged in discussions on the internet without making yourself a target of problematic actors. And the ability to critique media is critical, and it's not something you just learn on the fly. It's more a dimension of media competency that has to be learned and practiced and needs to be addressed in like pedagogical educational kind of approaches towards media, especially in schools. And it's not enough to just provide media in a digital form.
It
is not our goal to increase anti-scientific beliefs. We think that science has an important role here. And in this talk, we want to add to a more critical handling of misinformation. This critical handling in itself is a good scientific practice. Karl Popper has brought up the idea that good science is always something that we'll learn from misunderstanding. This is what we want. We want to learn from misunderstandings and learn how can we do things better. It's clear that problems like misinformation and disinformation, to ignore them is not a solution. We believe that the Swiss cheese model is the most useful. We need a confident science perspective that considers many perspectives and multidisciplines in misinformation and disinformation research. The science alone will not solve this problem. This is a task for the whole society. In the context of misinformation and disinformation, we have to pay attention not to make single groups or technologies responsible. disinformation and misinformation are only symptoms of societal problems. Fighting against them can be useful, but it shouldn't distract us from the structural problems and origins, from racism and sexism. It is not an option to we have to have free access to precise, transparent, and qualitatively good information, and we should have a good frame for engaging with disinformation. We have a few book recommendations here, and we thank you for your attention.
Ja, vielen Dank für diesen sehr spannenden.
Thanks for the very interesting talk, and we still have time for a few questions.
Gibt es jemanden, der eine Frage hat?
This was the English translation of the talk from Augustus to Trump about misinformation. I am the digital digital media spokesperson for the left-wing party in the German parliament, and disinformation is one of our most important topics. And one thing I miss here is I want to have the question answered where this is coming from. People are behind these campaigns. There's hardware, there's motives. We remember the doppelganger campaign, where we know that when you try to fight misinformation, you can also try to turn off the service on Hetzner, for example, a German cloud provider. You can try to find the botnets. You can try to turn them off. You can try to figure out who bought ads on Facebook that do misinformation. There is a European act that allows you to punish that with fines. There are designed to conclude. Do you also look at these aspects, where this is coming from, and if you could already try to stop it before it happens? Or we know these things, we think this is important. We are a computer science guy and a psychologist, so we have a certain focus and what we can do to help people. So obviously this is a challenge for the whole of society, and obviously politics is the most affected, and we're thankful for your efforts. In the context of preventative measures, in like taking a step back and trying to get people to stop formulating these lies and misinformation. And I looked at that, but I haven't looked at how to turn off bot farms, for example. So yeah, no, we don't do that. Okay, one very short question and a very short answer. Have you looked at informational, like how decision makers process information? And no, we haven't, but yeah, it's important. So from the internet, one more.
Gab die Frage, diese Belief Change Chat.
There was a question about these belief change chatbots are very effective, but isn't there a danger that if you adapt them, they do the complete opposite and are now a danger in themselves? Clearly, any tool can be used for good and evil, and anything that is used for one thing can be used for another. So it really is important to check how trustworthy the sender is for these tools, and that's the same for bots as for any other offer that you may find. So thanks a lot. Thanks for the time. This concludes the translation.